Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Doctor is In podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Nadia Sabeh, and this is our special series, What Plants Crave, where I'm talking to indoor and greenhouse growers about the plants they grow and how they got to where they are now. I took a short hiatus, as some of you may have noticed. There was a lot that went on in my life at the end of 2023. I had surgery on my rotator cuff, which put me out for a few weeks. At the same time, we discovered black mold in one of our bathrooms at our house. And so our bathroom was getting torn up and remodeled. And at the same time, we decided to move out of the office at Dr. Greenhouse that we'd had for over 5 years, and start a new chapter in office life. So it was a pretty busy time, and I'm really excited to start interviewing industry experts again in controlled environment agriculture, and to relaunch the interview process with my guest today. So today's guest is Aaron Fields, and he is the Vice President of Agriculture for Eden Green Technology in Cleburne, Texas. If you've never heard of Eden Green, they grow lettuces and culinary herbs in basically vertical towers in a greenhouse. So if you think of about a vertical farm, they're doing that in a greenhouse as opposed to in a warehouse type of structure. Each of their greenhouses about 62,500 square feet, but they grow a lot more lettuce than what that 1.5 acres might suggest. Before coming to Eden Green, he worked as a grower for Gotham Greens and our mutual friend, Jen Freimark. And a while back, he even was a lettuce breeder for field production of lettuce. So he really brings a unique perspective to the lettuce producing side of controlled environment agriculture and agriculture in general. We had the chance to catch up at Indoor AgCon a few weeks ago, and it was a very energetic conference. It was great to see a lot of people, and Aaron gave a great seminar on collaboration and the need for more of it in our industry to help grow and elevate our industry. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about his thoughts on that. Aaron, it's so great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for helping me kick off the interview sessions again. And yeah, I'm super excited to have this conversation with you today.
Woo! Thank you so much for having me. I'm super pumped. This is awesome. I'm really glad to be here. I'm glad you mentioned your trials and tribulations over last year because I really felt like I was there for a lot of them because we were like constantly bugging you for stuff like Nadia, we need this, and you're like, oh, that's great, Aaron. Let me put aside my mold and my surgery so I can help you with your problems. I appreciate that. Thank you.
um, so Aaron, tell us about just a little bit about how did you get into controlled environment agriculture in the first place?
Great question. One of my favorite things to talk about actually is that journey because it gives me perspective, reminds me of a lot of things and why I do this. I grew up in Southern Illinois and I was surrounded by corn and soybeans my entire life and swore from a young age that I would never live around a farm or be involved in farming or agriculture. And so that worked out well. And they come back to bite me. But um, I got a degree in biogeography. If you don't know what that is, I urge you all to check it out because it's super interesting, really cool topic that transcends a lot of different topics, especially in sciences and life sciences and the environment. But there's not a lot of jobs that say looking for a biogeographer. And so I struggled with that coming out of college and what the hell I was going to do. Shocker, right? And so I found a job with Monsanto actually, and it was doing research in a greenhouse. And I was like, you know, what the hell? And I'd never been in a greenhouse before. Greenhouses to me in Southern Illinois were the nurseries that grew the, bushes and shrubs and trees that people put in their landscaping. I had no clue at all until I was 26 that you grew food in a greenhouse in the United States. No clue, none whatsoever. And I bet you there's still most of the people where I'm from that don't really know that. And so I walked in this greenhouse and I fell in love immediately with the ability, the blend of art and science, the blend of intuition and knowledge, and the ability to use my hands and do science at the same time instead of just typing away with data and stuff. And so it was such a great blend of being outside and inside and it's an intimate relationship with the plant when you're in a greenhouse to me, because it's just you and that plant and what you're doing to it and how you're controlling it and how you make it thrive. And so that's how I got started in this. And it flourished from there. I was lucky enough to have super awesome opportunities throughout the rest of my career that just fostered that love of greenhouses and plants.
That's awesome. So you started with nurseries, and then was Gotham Greens your first vegetable food producing greenhouse?
It was. No, actually it wasn't. I said that and I'm like, oh no, wait. There was, oh gosh, how do I do this? Man, I'm struggling with my own past right now. Like when things
It's such a storied past.
It really is. I jumped around a lot. I'm trying to figure out what the hell I did. No. So I came back from when I went out to California. I chased my then girlfriend, now wife, to California, which worked out splendidly. So I'm really happy for that. And I got a job with a lettuce seed company, and it was a mom and pop seed company. I had no idea about lettuce, no clue, nothing, not a thing. One of my favorite stories is when we went to the greenhouse that they collect seeds in. It was a breeding operation. I walked in and here's this bolting lettuce, and I wonder if people in the greenhouse lettuce industry would know what bolting lettuce looks like in a field, but I didn't. And so I walked in and I have my boss next to me who's got his doctorate in plant breeding from New Mexico State. And he's a nice enough guy. And I'm like, oh, what the hell are these plants? And he's like, oh, that's lettuce. I'm like, I probably should have known that before I got this job, that's what lettuce looks like. So, but it was this great education into that second half of a life of lettuce that most people that eat lettuce or buy lettuce or grow lettuce don't have any idea about. It looks like a dandelion. It gets that big umbral of the flower that turns into the seeds that blow away in the wind. And I was doing crosses by hand. So that was my first growing vegetables in a greenhouse for a very different reason. But that reason was to be part of a pipeline development of product that we were growing in the field in California and Yuma. And so it was a really awesome background introduction into the machine that makes that lettuce go to your grocery store. Like, what do people look at? What are the diseases? What are the flavors, the crunch, the textures? What does Savoy mean, right? What's a core like? What's a good core measurement? How do you pop it out of the ground? Like the whole 9 yards. Things that I think most people that grow lettuce in greenhouses don't even talk about, because I don't think we're that great at variety trials in greenhouses yet, at least not in the U.S. And so there's not even a standard there. That's another topic. But so then I went.
I mean, just for a second, I mean, that's really interesting. I didn't know that part of your history. So I'm glad you brought it up because, well, I mean, there's a lot of talk right now, especially with vertical farms and greenhouses, about breeding and genetics for, a controlled environment that is different than what's happening in the field. And for you to be a part of that pipeline for field production, I mean, you must have some pretty interesting insights, not just in terms of what you need in your type of cropping system, but also how it can be achieved, right? And all the work that goes into genetic selection and breeding a specific crop to have traits that are going to work well, both in terms of how you're growing it, but also then has appeal to the consumer.
Yeah. There's that whole thing because we were doing everything from disease inoculation and resistance, where I mean, I could name varieties of icebergs and romaines that were just grown in the field just to get the genetics so you could cross it with something else like Defender and Conquistador. And nobody buys those anymore, but they have this awesome, one's bitter, but it's got the best downy mildew, resistance and the yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, and again, like I said, back then I was going to the greenhouse. I had to be there about an hour before sunrise is when those flowers open up, and you have about 10 minutes to make crosses. And it was, we were so far from anything with CRISPR or genetic mapping, and God knows lettuce is low on that list of things you're going to map, right? And so there was none of that going on, right? And it's not. And so, but I would go there, and the lettuce flowers are about the size of a dime when they're fully open at best, and they're yellow typically. And you would have to wait for that to fully open, and then you would break one off of one plant and run over to the other one and rub it on the other flower, and then you would take a tag, like with a string and a little tag, and you would write, 4XWB whatever by, contender, and then you would wait. And talk about an exercise in patience. It's like you would wait, and then would it make seed, number one? And then if it made seed, was it the right seed? You had no damn clue. And then you would plant these in these little flats, these 6 cell flats, and then you would grow it, and you wouldn't know if you were successful until you grew it in the field. Like, you had no idea. I'm looking for this Savoy cruncher. Did I get the mildew resistance? And then you'd have to go inoculate it. So you're freaking 3 months in before you even know if what you did worked. And it's not it's super gratifying, but you have to be patient. So it was humbling and educational. I got to learn what the sales guys thought about in field lettuce. I got to learn what the growers do. And it was really interesting. I got to see Yuma and Salinas. And if for anybody in this industry that haven't, just go, get yourself some perspective on what that industry is like now. I will never put those folks down that do that, but there is a better way to do some of that than other places. And it will definitely inspire you, I think, to keep on in this industry.
That's amazing. Well, I feel like we could have a lot of conversation on genetics, but let's keep moving forward.
Yeah, that was my second job. So
yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I was asking you the question about, going from, say, nursery crops to vegetable food crops is, the first thought that comes to my mind, or first question is, how are they different? In terms of what you need to manage with environment, with pesticides, with water, or are they pretty much the same?
So, side note, I never commercially grew in a nursery. I just worked at one for a little while. So, but that
Okay,
was
sure.
but I have a pretty good. There's 3 different answers I have for that. Number one, what you're selling is different. If you're selling flowers or nursery stuff, you have a much bigger arsenal because no one's going to eat that. And so, if you can get past the environmental toll or the use of conventional pesticides and chemicals or whatever for your own personal reasons, that's awesome. But you also have to be really careful because you're selling an aesthetic. And while I'm selling an aesthetic on my lettuce, there's a leeway with a lettuce or a tomato or whatever fruit and vegetable. People are starting to lean a little bit. We're finding out that little mar, that little spot, that little nick actually makes it look more real. It makes you feel like it was grown in a real farm or in a real environment. And people are starting to associate with that. There was a story about a frog in some lettuce a couple of years ago, and people actually, the response was exactly opposite, because everyone's like, oh, it's good to know that a frog doesn't die in your lettuce because it's all full of chemicals and storage. And like, nobody saw that coming, but it was completely the public perception. Obviously, no one wants a frog in their food, but there was this other side of it, like, look at that. And so I don't sell an aesthetic as much in my lettuce as you would with like a shrub or some of these landscape flowers. And then there's that timing aspect with if you want a flower to open or you need to be a certain size or bugs being transported. So it's a very different world. But as far as like greenhouse goes, I'm trying to push stuff, right? With lettuces, with herbs, like I'm trying to just like drive this in a Ferrari right now and do it excellent on an excellent level and sustainably and efficiently. And I feel like some of that nursery stuff is more, you have a set timeline and set inputs, and it's really understood and really standardized. And a lot of what we do for lettuce and herbs in America is not standardized at all yet. Everyone's doing their own thing and still figuring that out.
That's interesting. I mean, one of the things that I think about with floriculture is how challenging it's got to be to have a supply of poinsettias at Christmas when they really want, to be at their full bloom more like in February, right?
Yep.
Or strawberries and roses in February for Valentine's Day. Like, oh
Right.
my gosh, where are those flowers coming from? And what did the growers have to do in order to create an environment to have roses, right? Available in mass in huge volumes
Right.
for Valentine's Day. And then there's Easter lily. I mean, there's so many flowers that we associate with
These
holidays and times of the year
mums
that it's not when they would normally be
do.
growing.
No. Yeah. I talk about that a lot when I talk to the people who are in. I like to work with FFA programs and some of the education because that's all they're doing. Like you go to a high school, a lot of the ones I've seen, especially in Texas, but also in Illinois, it's like, all right, plant your lilies for Easter and your mums for the fall and your this, and then the poinsettia. And it's so scheduled and so like routine for them that they don't even think. And I feel that that's a whole other conversation on how we educate young people
Mm,
for this industry, which is
interesting.
something I'm very interested in right now. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of interest to educate young people to build the skill set, the labor force, the interest and buy-in to CEA and farming and agriculture in general, just understanding our food systems.
absolutely.
Another conversation to have. Uh, so tell me, like I said in the intro, you guys at Eden Green Technologies are growing in vertical growing systems in a greenhouse. And I think most people think of vertical production in a warehouse type of a structure or container or something, right? Four walls and a roof. Um, why? And what are some of the advantages of growing that in that style in a greenhouse as opposed to, a regular kind of building?
Let me back that up and I will get to your answer because I love that question. And I one of the reasons I want to back it up is because that's one of the reasons I took this job. So when I
Hmm.
came and saw this, I had a couple job offers on the table, and this was out of nowhere. It was an ad for a hydro microclimate greenhouse, and I was like, I don't even think that's a real word. And
What
like,
does that mean?
we'll talk about that some other time.
Okay.
But some of that is about self definition, though, how you define something that resonates. But in any case, I was like, I got to see this. So I come down here and I see this thing, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, there's no way. And but that skepticism is also intriguing to me, right? Like, well, like it's this or there's that challenge, that innovation, that being on that. Are you on the bleeding edge or the cutting edge? Like that really got me excited. Like I felt like my time at Gotham for them was a lot like that. It's a very different company then than it was now, and I think that I kind of am finding my place in these transitional. These I like to build things, I like to create things, and I love that part of my job at Gotham. And still love those guys. And I wanted to do that again from a very, very like bootstraps company. And I was like, man, these guys could really use some help growing. They didn't have a lot of growing stuff. They didn't really have a lot of greenhouse stuff. What they had was this very raw, cool idea and design. And I was like, okay, maybe I want to do this. Maybe I'll take some time to try to prove myself wrong. Right? How do I get outside of my comfort zone and go, yeah, you don't believe in this, but why don't you go try to, you know, how would you answer yourself as a skeptic? And that's how I look at everything. Like if I had to prove myself wrong right now, or if I had to say that was wrong, how do I do that? And so I wanted to go there and be like, all right, Aaron, get out of your comfort zone, get out of your box and stop pretending like the old way to do it is the right way to do it. Or maybe there's a different way to do it. It's not the right and wrong. And that's what got me here. And so over time, my definition of our success, my definition of what that system does well has evolved dramatically and it continues to evolve. And right now, I tend to define it as the number one thing it does well is that it allows you to put more plants in less space while using the sun. I have to give a shout out and a name drop to Janet Gotham because she fueled my desire to always work with the sun. So she was like, "Why ignore that great big ball of free energy?" And there's arguments for and against that, but I love that, and I've kind of stuck with that. So now you have this ability to grow super dense in a greenhouse, use the sunlight, but then you have all these other problems, right? The temperature striation, everything is on a level now, right? And I fought that for the longest time, but what it did was it allowed you to grow more plants. Now you have to get the climate right for each one of those plants. And that microclimate definition I talked about earlier is really about the ability to bring what a plant craves to each individual plant spot and at one time, and how much can you differentiate that in a greenhouse. And it makes you turn your theories of greenhouse management and positive pressure and dispersal of phenomenon in a greenhouse on its head, because like I don't care what that temperature is in like 40% of my greenhouse, like at all. I don't care, because if I can keep this plant super happy, that's all I care about for my settings. Now, what happens to the air after that and where it goes and how I get it out, that's also really important, but my plant doesn't care about that. It just doesn't care. It cares when it starts influencing that microclimate or that climate around the plant. Microclimate has a different definition, obviously, in botany and horticulture. But when we talk about that, we're talking about that bubble of like 1 to 1.5 foot air around each plant spot, and delivering the water and the air at each plant spot, which is what our towers allow us to do, is really what makes you able to keep more plants in a more dense environment. And then if you can sell the labor for that, then it's you're off to the races, which we think we know we've done. We're constantly learning. This is that lesson of no playbook and no I can't go look this up. And every theory you read about, from computer controls to semi-closed greenhouses to plant empowerment, it applies, but only this much, only a little bit. You still have to go figure out how to apply that to a system no one's ever grown in before, which is super exciting, and I love it, and it's so much fun. But it's also ridiculously frustrating, and I want to bang my head against the wall 10 times a day and just I quit, I give up, I'm not doing this anymore. You know what I mean? Like, this is dumb. Like, it's to the point like where my retirement plan is like, can I just go grow in a flat greenhouse somewhere off in the desert and be completely
Mm.
happy in a low tech greenhouse? No, I'd be bored. I know better. But yeah, I think that kind of answers your question. That's what that tech does. It allows you to be more dense, and then it allows the ability to get really versatile in a greenhouse, like 12 herb varieties in the same greenhouse right now. So,
Wow.
and we keep doing better with that. We keep learning and applying our knowledge and experience.
You mentioned stratification, which I think of usually in terms of temperature and humidity, but um, what is the light environment like
Mm.
from top to bottom? Because you are using the power of the sun, but
Yeah,
I would assume that there's some shading down at the lower part of the
totally.
canopy. Do you how do you solve that problem?
Great question. Love studying light. Absolutely love studying light. It's one of my favorite things to study when it comes to horticulture. And when I got there, the people who had built this correctly understood that in Texas, you actually get enough DLI and light energy year round to grow lettuce. It's not a very light hungry plant, and you can do that with very little expansion of your days to harvest all year round. That's great. But then they went and put a bunch of crap in the way, these
Uh,
towers and these walls and everything. I'm like, wait, it doesn't work that way. And so they did some very early on rudimentary studies of like how far apart you wanted your aisles to be to allow this Stonehenge effect in the greenhouse, and our Manhattan henge. I always talk about when you see the sunset across down the street
yeah,
from that.
yeah,
And that's kind of the way I started thinking about this is, okay, that's cool, but it's never going to be consistent. So sidebar to that, like, do I want all my plants to be exactly the same, or do I want a bulk product? That's a whole nother thing. But in any case, I knew I had to try to equalize this light to give us the option, right? And so at the beginning when I got there, we saw an 80% difference between the top plant spot and the bottom plant spot, which, as everybody knows, is never going to fly. You can't
wow.
run a production. So the first thing I was like, we need top lights. And not a lot of people here at that time at Eden Green understood lighting in a greenhouse or the energy or the money or whatever. And it was really when I think LEDs were starting to become really mainstream, like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. Like, I wouldn't say mainstream, but like everyone was like stopped arguing so much and just went, okay,
Yeah.
it's not a question of if, it's a question of when you're going to put LEDs in, right? And what you can do with it. And so we took that leap with another name drop with my buddy Chris Higgins and GE and their light product. And I said, hey, get him in here. But we also put in 3 other light products, and I did trials for 6 months, which was super exciting to me. I got to play in this sandbox with light trials, and it was just top lighting. And so now your light went from 80% at the top, 20% at the bottom, to like, there was not, now there's like, or not, sorry, an 80% drop from top to bottom, to like a 60% drop from top to bottom. Right. And it was just because you were getting more light energy at the bottom. So now you start thinking about these radical things like, what's the angle my light's getting, pushed out at? And if I just want to light a wall, I don't want my lights shining straight down, right? Because
Right.
then I'm wasting all the light energy. But if I face them to the side, I now have a finite footprint of how much I'm lighting at one time. And you have this whole argument of, how you bend light and how you move light and which angle it has and all that. And so coming up with some of these solutions of lights that have 140-degree plus angles, you can see that what we call like a batwing pattern on our vines. So we start bringing these lights and we hung them sideways and up and down and at an angle of 45 degrees facing the wall. I mean, there was one time where we had lights on the floor pointing up at our plants. Like it was everything. It was so much fun, but it was also really educational. And everything acted the way you wanted it to, or you expected it to for the most part. You just now had proof. And so once we figured that out, we're like, how do we do this? And eventually we got to this mobile light system. And so then it was like, I don't want to move my plants to the lights, but I will move my lights to the plants. And how do you do that? And there was just a whole like kind of an epiphany or a new door we opened. We started talking about lowering these lights up and down in a vine and delivering a set light to the sides of the plants. And then you need significantly less lights and less power. Then how do you move it effectively? And so you move it effectively if you can put these light sensors on top to bottom in a certain interval. And again, I equate it to like you see at these parties, you see these fountains where they pour champagne in the top glass and it's a pyramid and it fills all the ones underneath it. It's like the same idea. You're dumping light into this area and your top's always going to have more and it's going to fill the cup differently as it goes down. But then if you move your light down, you're no longer filling that top plant spot. You're just filling the bottom plant spot. But it's already been getting a little bit of light throughout the day because you have that residual light from the bottom. So my top plant spot's now getting more light than my bottom plant spot. But if I can move down in accordance with what I need, now I'm lighting that differently. So 300, 200, 100, top, middle, bottom. If I go back to that, now I move my light down to the middle and the middle's getting 300 and the bottom's getting 200 and the top's getting 0 if I don't have any sunlight outside. And then you start playing with that, supplementing the sunlight. And so if I have these PAR sensors that tell me how much light I'm getting and I have a target, now I can write an algorithm that says lights on here, lights on for this long, must be at this PPFD, you must hit this target DLI, then you can move. And it got really, really tricky because now you're telling lights to be on and off and motors to move in conjunction with what you're reading outside, what your diffusion through your plastic is, considering things like RTR, your ratio of temperature to radiation, and all this comes into play. And the world is crazy now, right? But we're getting it to work. It's really, 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 really cool to the point to where you've been in our greenhouse. You don't notice a difference when you walk in of that butterhead at the top and that butterhead at the bottom. You just don't see it. It's there a little bit, but you don't see it. And it's been one of the more fun things ever. Just studying, okay, so now you have light sensors. How many do you put in? In a perfect world, you want a light sensor every plant spot, but nobody can afford that. It's a research thing, right? So how many do I need? Well, now you go and you set light sensors in one row, and then you slowly move them apart until you see a significant difference throughout the day. I did that over like 3 months. And it found out that if you have light sensors in 4 rows in either or 5 rows in either direction from one of our rows, you don't see a significant difference over a significant amount of time for light. Okay, now I need one set of sensors every 5 rows. Now I can work with that. And it turned out in our new greenhouse, the number was easier if we did instead of 10 rows, 5 on either side, it's 7. And so we have these groups of 7. We have 43 light sensors in our greenhouse, 14 arrays that are constantly feeding data back. And you can also move your lights differently. So when the sun's up on one side, they're high. And when it's on the other side, as the sun goes east to west over the greenhouse, your lights are constantly reacting. Is it perfect? Hell no. Is it awesome? Yeah, it's awesome. And it's so much fun to learn this. And you get to see that gratification of your plants being consistent from top to bottom. It's super rewarding. Really long-winded answer, but that's
Well, no,
where
I mean, I think that's really clever. I mean, if I just picked one of those data points, right, DLI, for example, and you know that I'll just pick a number, 15 DLI is your target. That, at the top on a sunny day anyway, that those plants are going to get 15 DLI all day, right? Like every day, as long as it's sunny. So it's like you don't need to light those at the top, but that maybe 4 feet down, they're only going to max out at 12 DLI. So you're like, okay, now I'm going to run the lights down to that area for an hour. And then just that extra hour is going to get it to 15 DLI. And then
Yeah.
you drop it again down to the next section and it's only ever going to hit 9 DLI. So you're like, okay, then I need to run it for 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
At the lights to hit the target so that you're
And there's two other
consistently
parts
hitting
that
a DLI there. Yeah.
there's two that so sustainability, if you want to talk about energy usage, like lights are like 50% of my energy,
Mm.
like hands down, right? Because I have a ton of them now. But you can use that super sustainably, especially if you start getting into predictability and AI. You start using programs. Our partners at Hogan Dorn are fantastic with this right now. Of like, I had 4 sunny days that got 2,000 joules. I'm going to have two more, and then I'm going to have a really low one. So now
Mm.
my lights don't even start out at the top. They don't even get there. I'm going to get there by myself, like you said. My system knows that. It knows don't even start at plant spot top at 18. Start at 15. You don't even need to go up there, right? Counter that with the fact that lettuce, unfortunately, is picky when it comes to light, and I can't just cook my butterhead in 27 DLI at the top of my greenhouse.
Yeah.
Now I have to use my energy curtains and my shades. Well, that complicates the hell out of everything, right? Because now I'm shading the top ones, but I need the light to get down to the bottom one.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what's your glass or plastic diffusion rate? What's your diffusion rate through your energy curtains? And where the hell are your lights moving at right now? So it's been a journey that's intriguing and exciting and frustrating and beautiful all at the same time.
And unique, right?
Yes.
To what you're
Definitely.
doing.
But,
And I imagine if and you're in Southern Eden Green, I guess we didn't mention, but Eden Green is in
a beautiful state.
Texas.
Yes.
Lots of sun, lots of heat,
Love.
pretty dry. Do you guys get monsoon at all? Do you get any of that humidity
So
coming
we
up?
have this. We don't, and I've talked to some of the other growers that have moved to Texas since we've been here, and they ask about the weather and stuff, and I'm like, man, I sit on the dry line. If you're familiar with the concept of the dry line in the United States and how that airflow moves with the jet stream, Cleburne, Texas, is like dead center of the dry line in Texas, and so we are in a constant state of flux. The only thing that is constant there is the wind. It is constantly windy there, which makes that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But we don't get that Gulf air moisture because that desert mountain air is pushing that away most of the time. But we also don't get the super extreme dry heat that you get in East Texas. We're right in the middle. And I tell you what, they used to say if you can grow in Texas, that's the hardest it's going to get. I was like, that's BS. But now I'm like, nah, that's probably as hard as it's going to get in Cleburne, Texas, anyway. Like hot, wind, whatever the hell else, tornadoes, whatever, it's all there. So, yeah, I welcome the challenge of other places right now. So
Yeah. I would imagine that you would have to not start from scratch, but
it's starting from
or rethink some of these algorithms in a
yeah,
different location. If you were in a northern climate, right? Like you might be starting your lights at the top every day.
yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
you're
Yeah.
right. And on a
Yeah.
lot longer, and then you start playing with
Yeah.
that idea of like, does lettuce even need a dark period? And there's a lot of data that goes back and forth on that. Can I just run these 24/7? Yeah, you can, but can you afford that? And does it make sense? Does lettuce pay for that? That's a huge, thing that I think people miss in this market is just because you can doesn't mean you should. And lettuce doesn't pay for a lot of those fancy things, and it shouldn't.
Mm.
Uh, so let's consider that. That where that's going. So let's
Yeah. Yeah.
let's.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. So, I'm to kind of lead into my next question, which is about collaboration. You mentioned you're in Texas. There's now several lettuce growers in Texas. Texas is big, so I would imagine there's room for everyone, for a lot of people. And in a previous conversation, you mentioned that when you look at some of the other lettuce companies that have come in or lettuce producers that have come in, that um, in some ways you're not really competing for the same market, that you guys have each found a niche that works really well for your business model, for the system that you guys are growing in. And and that's kind of my lead into this idea of collaboration, because we've had conversations about this, how um, CEA is both a new and an old
Mm.
method system of growing. I
Yeah.
think that people rediscovered controlled environment agriculture with the onset, with the idea, the concept of vertical farming. And then as cannabis growers, as cannabis was being legalized, they still were growing indoors to protect and secure, their crop, and not be seen or heard, I guess, or smelled, I should say. And so a lot of people went indoors, right? And now what we're seeing is a lot of people coming back out
Hmm.
and growing in greenhouses for economic reasons, and because the technology, right, is there. It's been there for decades. And this is my long-winded way to ask this question, obviously, but
I like it. It's
um
great.
but also you mentioned the lettuce seed, right? Like the field lettuce producers. And
Yeah.
for me, something that I have been really impressed with, or that has made an impression on me, I guess I should say, is how the conversations have been evolving over the years, from, we're in competition, greenhouses and well, let's start with vertical farms are in competition with each other. Vertical farms are in competition with greenhouses. CEA is in competition with the field. Now all of a sudden it's field producers are looking at greenhouses and CEA as a tool in their toolkit, and how
Yeah.
can we work together? Like, it's been such a fun evolution to be a part of and to witness over the last 15 years or so. And somewhat frustrating for those of us who've been in horticulture for a while, saying, hey, like this over here, please listen to the experts that are already available to answer your technical or horticultural questions. But I just wanted to get a sense from you, like what that experience has been like for you, and kind of where you see the opportunities for collaboration, and maybe I should call it friendly competition,
Yeah.
collegial
Yeah.
competition amongst CEA
Cooperative
growers as
competition.
well. Yeah, cooperative. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, and even amongst the lettuce producers at large.
Yeah. No, as an industry, right? What are we talking about? A $4 billion industry or whatever the hell it is. Like,
Just in
so
lettuce?
yeah, it's something ridiculous like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, that's the USDA number, I think, including all leafy greens. And yeah, obviously check me on that, but it's something like that. And so there's a lot in there. I think when we first started my journey, the first time I went to Yuma, I thought about how amazing it was that you could grow lettuce in the desert, and then I thought about how dumb this is. And I mean, like, it was like, this is so cool. Look at it's beautiful, and it's this oasis in the middle of the desert, and yada. I'm like, why the hell are we growing lettuce in a desert? You're making this harder. And so, and then you're using all the resources for it. But there's a blend there. It's not stupid. It's resourcefulness. But is it necessary? And so that spurred me to find companies like Gotham, and why I really wanted to go there is like, how do you solve I was driven by how do you solve this 3,000 mile lettuce thing? And it's not all food, you're not feeding everybody, but how do you do this? And so I really think I was inspired to do that. And that went all the way the other spectrum. Like, okay, I'm gonna go and we're gonna replace all the lettuce on the East Coast in a greenhouse, or all the lettuce in Texas in a greenhouse. But I'm like, is that really what I want to do? And that evolution, fast forward to now, is you and I spoke about this at the conference. Like, we keep talking about how much of the pie indoor and greenhouses are getting. What do you call success? If you've made this shift to, okay, we want to work with the outdoor guys and we all need to be part of the solution. Do you have a target with what percent you want to be then? If we're 3% of the market right now, do you have a percentage where you go, okay, we're good? Is that realistic? Capitalism is going to tell you it's not. But like, is that realistic are we big enough to say, we really want to see if we can get that 35% of the market that is truly effective, efficient, useful, sustainable to the industry? Or we really want to make sure that all the clamshell products or all the salad mixes come from greenhouses because it's safer? Or I don't know, like, what do you talk about? Like, if you really are going to get together, What problem do you need to solve, and who's the best to do that right now? Then go off and divide and conquer amongst yourselves. But you can all be better as an industry before you beat each other up.
Yeah. Have you exper what how do I want to ask this question? I guess like what has been your experience in terms of competition and collaboration with the industry or with other growers, I guess maybe more specifically?
I think when I first started, and I'll start with my Gotham because that's really when I was introduced to that, is Gotham, Bowery, Arrow Farms, Bright Farms, all in that kind of genesis out of New York, Northeast, and then spread out. And it was so cloak and dagger, more so than it is now then. And it was so like we don't want to talk to them and you don't bring up these guys and this and that, whatever. And I get it now looking back on it. I had zero business acumen at that point. So like I was like, whatever, I'm growing lettuce. And then I was like, yeah, I'm just growing lettuce. I really don't care. But you also had a lack of growers, more so now. And so it was constant poaching and talking and yada, 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 and whose greenhouse and what greenhouse. And we didn't know anything. And you look back now, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. But we did good. And so that was my first introduction to that competition and those companies. But like again, fast forward to Eden Green, I don't see any of them as my competitors. I don't have a brand. We don't have a brand. We don't have a marketing, campaign around just Eden Green lettuce. We sell products that people use to fill white label contracts and these big bulk and whole head products. And I don't want to make a salad kit. I don't want to give you super, fancy lettuce or a specific type or tell you that mine tastes better because, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but like that's not our goal. Our goal is to fill a need for the actual food that's going out to places. I'm not marketing you a product, I'm selling you food. And it's almost a commodity at that point. And it's really interesting because you guys go ahead, keep filling that. That's a niche, like I brought about earlier. That's your section that you can do really, really awesome. And there's a need for that. I'm trying to fill the other side of that spectrum right now. And so I'm happy to tell you what I'm doing and share with what I'm learning, talk to these growers in Texas, because, as much as we may be competing for maybe shelf space on the far end of this equation, we're still all trying to grow the same thing for the same problems.
What do field lettuce growers do really well that
um,
indoor greenhouse growers haven't quite figured out yet?
the first thing is they do it cheaper, right?
Touche.
Like that's easy. Like when people start talking about like the cost effectiveness, like don't even try to touch that right now. Like no one's going to touch field cost, but there's a risk with that when you talk about what the public demands. But field growers are great at knowing their product and their market much better than us. They, like I said earlier, like that pipeline development is so intricate and so complex in a very good way right now that they know exactly what they're putting out for exactly what reason to fill a contract for a whole head romaine that has disease resistance, good flavor, good crunch, a Savoy leaf, and it's always going to be this variety, and we're going to keep working on that variety coming out of that, right? But it's really, really specific, right? Like we would grow one kind of romaine and one kind of iceberg for 2 years while you were using that genetics to build the next one, right? So
Mm.
they're very good at growing. We in the greenhouse industry, and some of this is for lack of options because there's not a lot of people. We're at the advent of breeding in for greenhouse products and greenhouse lettuces, I think, but that wasn't there. So you're just picking varieties, and then you have some of the seed companies going, "Oh, this is a good greenhouse variety, and this is a good greenhouse variety." Okay, sure, but like at Eden, especially, nothing grows the way you say it's going to grow because it's such a weird system and unique and great. So I'm like, just give me all your lettuce seed. Give me everything. No, that's a field variety. I don't care. Bring it to me. I want to see what we can do, and we're going to push this. We're just grabbing all these varieties that are available to us when field guys know exactly what variety they want to put in what field for what reason and that contract. I think that's something that we can do better.
Yeah, and on that note, I mean, they've had time to develop these relationships, to develop really to create a demand, right,
Mm-hmm.
for the products that they are growing. Um, when it comes to CEA products, is it just a matter of time to create that demand for the supply that we have?
It's a matter of
What do
time.
consumers and buyers want?
Oh, good Lord. That's a whole other question. I
It
have
is a
this.
whole other question.
It is, right? So I have this. It literally is, Aaron. Good catch, Aaron. Yeah.
There was a question mark.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Look at that. So observant today. I have a annoying habit of asking people in the grocery store why they bought that lettuce, and I
I
have
love
done.
that.
And because
What do they say? Do you write down the
most of the
answers?
time they're like price, cheap.
Yeah, of course it
And
is.
they look
Yeah.
at me like, "Why the hell are you asking me this, you weirdo? I'm not talking to you," and they walk away, which is fine. But like I brought this up a lot recently, but I was like, I don't know that there's a lot of people that come home and they eat their lettuce right away and they say, "Man, that doesn't taste good. I'm calling the grocery store." Nobody's ever done that. I don't think anybody's ever done that. And
Okay.
part
Keep going. No.
no, you can tell me you did. That's fine. And that's great. But I also think that's because people don't know what lettuce is supposed to
Well,
taste like.
right.
It's a delivery garnish. It makes your sandwich look healthy. It makes your burger look healthy. It's
It
crisp.
makes your
It's clean.
salad dressing look healthy.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're just gonna drown it in dressing and ketchup and mustard or whatever, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But let's be real about who we are and what we're doing,
Hmm.
right? We shouldn't be trying to make something like a coffee or a wine where you have, my lettuce has a hint of cinnamon and nutmeg in it right now, right? Like that's ridiculous. No, you're not doing that. That's not our goal. You want it to be a crisp, textural, fresh, almost watery delivery with something else. That's what you want right now. And that's awesome. But let's start talking about that, right? Flavor doesn't distinguish you. Nobody goes to a grocery store and buys for flavor. You buy it with your eyes because you look for you want something that looks pretty, doesn't make you sick. It better be food safe, which is something we do
True
really, really
that.
well.
True that.
People believe that, and you really want to believe that it doesn't have outside of the sick thing, like it wasn't made in this chemically gross pesticide thing. And so those three things matter. And then it's just got to look good. It's that aesthetic, and then maybe after that you have an experience with the product. Maybe you've bought that before. Oh yeah, tell me the last time you went. Yeah, I'm definitely buying that lettuce again because it was awesome. Like I don't think we resonate that way yet, and that's okay. But still, it's like there's this great math of like I'm going to get this. Like 90% of people that go into a grocery store in the produce section buy lettuce, right? Like you still buy it every time. You just don't care as much as we think you want to care. That's okay. Let's be honest about that and let's start growing a product that fits that bill. Now, if you want to go out and reinvent that awesome flavor profile delivery, super sexy lettuce, go do it. That's fine. I've said 1,000 times over, I can grow you $10 lettuce if you want to pay for $10 lettuce. That's fine. But that's not the niche that I'm focused on right now.
Well, when I think about an experience with lettuce, I mean, like a true experience, it's probably more like in a restaurant, right?
Absolutely.
Where the
What do you expect?
presentation is beautiful and
Yeah,
there's some microgreens splashed on it, right?
sure.
And the colors are really vibrant and just there's this balance of all the things that go on the salad. Or they've marketed it to me as, well, it's a Caesar salad, so it better be romaine lettuce,
Right.
right? It's a wedge salad, so it better be half
Iceberg.
of a high iceberg lettuce. So but at home, yeah, I mean, personally, I'm probably buying mostly salad kits because they are easy.
Yes,
And if I'm not, it's for a very specific reason,
absolutely.
right? I'm
I mean,
not I don't always pick the same lettuce products.
nobody does.
And
I don't think
yeah,
anybody does. No one's
yeah,
brand loyal with lettuce. You probably don't even know outside if you're not in this industry. Name 4 lettuce brands, right? Like,
right.
come on, folks. Like, and that's okay. Don't feel like you have to be that way. That brand recognition is exciting for some things, but like, really, how often are you buying like lettuce for a party platter to impress your friends with your, you know, lettuce wraps or something like that? That's once
Right.
once a year, maybe.
Well, and
Um,
just produce in general. I mean, there's not that many branded
no,
products.
and
I
there
mean,
should
there's
be. Right.
Cuties, right? And
Sure.
Driscoll's
I think the
and
people
Nature's Sweet.
that
I mean,
the ones that resonated with some of the customers I've talked to that have talked with me or people I've spoken with, organic girl rings true because organic's in the title. I mean, that's
mhm.
about it. That's a whole other thing that can go down,
It's
right?
frog approved.
Right, exactly, right? Frogs love this. Free pet with every clamshell. But yeah, however you want to
And
sell
maybe
that.
some E. coli. No, I'm
Right,
kidding.
yeah, sure, exactly, right? It's a bit
Yeah.
symbol.
Yeah.
But people recognize that the Taylor Farms. If it says farms, people think farm, but they don't even hardly read it, right? They turn it over, they look if there's brown stuff on it, and if it's not, they buy it, right? Like that's the end of it, right? And you have so much more leeway for a wet wall product because you expect that somebody just got that out of the farm down the street, which is complete BS. But like that, you look at it that way, so you're more lenient. It can have this, I'm going to take the outside leaves off anyway, or whatever. You don't have that leeway in a greenhouse product or in a clamshell
That's
product.
so true. Yeah.
That's okay, but just be realistic about what people are really, really buying. Texture, color, and safety is really what really matters to people.
And price, probably.
Total price. Yeah. I mean, that goes without saying. And I didn't even bring that
Right.
up. I think I said that was the first thing people say is
You
average.
did. You did. Yep. Yep.
But like, I won't even go down that avenue.
I'm going to start following. I wish we lived in the same place because I would start following you around with a camera as you ask people randomly.
Yeah. So I have had a couple times where like the store associates look at me like, stop bothering customers, please.
Right.
Or I'll stand there and I'm like, I'm in the produce section. My wife and my kids are floating around grocery shopping. I'm like taking pictures of the back of this clamshell and look how this looks on the wet wall and telling this to my marketing guy and my sales guy. I'm like, guys, check this out. I'm like, what a weirdo, right? Like that's fine. I'm okay with that. It's important though. Like if you're really gonna do something, if you're really gonna dig in, all your money, all the bread and butter is in what people think of the product when it gets to the store. That's really what it is. And that puts perspective on how I do my job every day. Like, do I think this is going to end up on somebody's plate or in your house? And why do you want it to be that way?
And
I like,
ultimately, that's also what's then going to drive the buyer's decision to buy
yeah,
from you, right? Is that there's throughput, is that they're actually
that's right.
selling
Yeah.
what's on the shelf because the consumers want that. So they're getting feedback constantly from what
Sure.
consumers
And
perception
we
is of the
don't get
product.
that. Like very rarely is there significant feedback, in my opinion, from the stores to the actual producers. They definitely never tell you when there's something good, right? Like, hey, that's really awesome. They tell you when something's wrong with it. And other than that, you fill your planogram, and those places sell shelf space. They don't sell products, right? It's my job to get more shelf space because I'm putting more product through. But rarely do they say, though, people are buying that because of this. You can go in depth research on that if you want to, but it's like, hey, we moved 40 instead of 20 last week. This is doing really good. Keep that up. We'll take some more. That's it. Nobody asks why, right? But you can discern that. I think there's a breakdown of that communication. I think some people do that very well, but you have to go ask and hunt people down. And there's so many people on that chain of what gets accepted, what gets delivered, what gets put on the shelf, when it gets put on the shelf, where it gets put on the shelf, who does the restock, how long it's been there, that so many variables that people don't even think about, that I want to see that whole journey to understand why that looks better or doesn't look better, right? Oh, that lettuce looks like crap. Well, yeah, it sat in the cooler because someone didn't FIFO it. And then they put it out on the shelf, and of course it didn't sell because it didn't look as good as the stuff that didn't sit in the cooler. Who knows? Who knows, right? So if you want to talk about throughput, there's a whole nother conversation around communication and feedback loop, which is why I go and stare at lettuce at a grocery store for half an hour.
And I mean, shelf life is one of the potential um advantages, right, that CEA has, is that if that product was grown locally or even just didn't have as long of a life from field to shelf, then theoretically it should be lasting longer in your refrigerator, right? That you don't have to eat it that same day. Maybe you can give it a week and it'll still be good.
Oh, I totally agree with that, and that's 100%. And I wonder how much of a sell point that is.
Hmm.
I told somebody at one point, like maybe it's a sell point. I don't. It's a perceived sell point. Is it a realized sell point? I don't think so.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
if you want your lettuce to be good in a month, you're not eating lettuce the right way. Like, what are you doing? Right? Like, how much did
If
you
you
buy?
haven't eaten it in a month, you probably threw it
Right? Like,
away and bought
come on,
new.
let's not, do you really
Yeah.
like
Even
lettuce?
if it still was good. Yeah.
Right. That's great. Right. And then you go down that line of, expiration dates are complete BS also, because like they're just made up,
Right.
covered in that. So like, it's 14 days. What's 2 weeks? 2 weeks from when and by whom and for what?
Yeah.
So while I think that's important that people want to hear that, because there's a very real aspect that people don't want to go back to the store every 2 days to buy more lettuce because it's bad. Um, and that is a very, very good sell. I don't think they care how long it lasts, like if you give them days, but I think they want to know that I'm going to be able to eat all this before it goes bad. And so there's
Yep.
some assimilation there, something you can build on there.
So, I mean, there's a lot that lettuce growers, indoor, greenhouse, outdoor, that we're all sort of striving for. And there's different niches and markets that we can be targeting with the product that we're growing and selling. What during Indoor AgCon, you gave this great seminar that was basically a call to action for more collaboration. And so, in the spirit of what we just talked about, that there's a lot of opportunity, right? We're 3% of all the lettuce, CEA is 3% or 4% of all the lettuce produced. There's still a lot of room for growth. As far as we know, people aren't eating lettuce less; they might be eating lettuce more.
Yeah.
It's getting harder and harder to produce lettuce in the field due to water and soil and
Safely. Yeah.
smoke and fires and hazards that we're having out here in the West.
Yeah.
Um, where do you see the biggest opportunities for that friendly competition, for collaboration within the
It's good.
industry? Like, are there specific things that we can all work together toward without giving away a secret sauce, right? Or
Yeah.
IP or know-how, but that would benefit everyone together?
Sure. Education. Yeah, educate the public on what you're doing and how you're doing it and why it matters. I'll go as far to say like there should be a national ad campaign for greenhouses, like not just lettuce, greenhouses, from our greenhouse to your house, whatever you want to call it. There should be something there that says I'm growing safe, fresh food close to your house, and it should matter to you, or this is how awesome this is, and or why we do this or why it's better. Nobody knows that. It's the organic argument or the greenhouse argument. Like ask 10 Americans what organic means. You'll get 10 different definitions. Nobody knows. You don't know. It's whatever they want it to mean to you, and you're gonna buy it because of that. But
Hmm.
like it's the same thing for a greenhouse. There was the it doesn't taste the same, or it's not like my backyard tomato or whatever. Like, but let's start talking about that. Like, I don't have to tell you anything about even what kind of greenhouse I grow in or my light recipe or fertilizer or whatever, to say, hey, we're all doing something really, really cool and nobody knows about it at all. Maybe we should tell somebody, right? And so, like, how do you educate the public of what CEA is? I don't really love that acronym, actually. I think it's more confusing. People don't need another acronym. So, like, what is greenhouse grown? What is a fresh, you know, my kale is better because you've probably only had 2-week old kale or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, is there a difference there? Does that freshness matter in flavor? Again, back to the flavor thing. But I think just going on a national, international, whatever you want to call it, on a campaign that just educates people to what we're really trying to do and why. Throw sustainability in there, throw the 3,000-mile lettuce in there. That's fine. I don't think people buy lettuce because it's sustainable right now. I don't. I think it's an awesome ESG part of that. I think there's some valuation to that, but I don't think it increases your sales. But I think if people understand like these stories, tell the story of why we grow in greenhouses,
Mm.
story of why people like me or why the Rebels or Gothams or Little Leafs or even like, the tomato guys, why they do what they do, why it matters to them, why you're passionate about something. You put that passion on your product and it becomes throughput because you're educating just through what you know and what you love. And I think that could be the biggest place that we could all get along together for a little while.
I love that. I love that. Where do you see the greatest need for I'm going to just say
Yep.
technology development. I'm a technology person.
Yeah.
So let's, yeah.
That's good.
Because I
So
think there's a lot of places for
sure,
improvement. But
no,
if
there
we
is.
focus on technology,
I really, this has been really high on my list lately because we hired a new director of operations. His name is Tejas, and he's fantastic. And he's an engineer, and he's like a tech geek. And I thought I was really like tech savvy. I'm an idiot. I had no idea what I was talking about. And he's like, "No, this." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You can do that? Holy moly!" And so like he's learning. Like I've opened up to the whole new world of how to effectively use like Chat GPT and all that stuff. I'm like, "Oh my god!" And so like
nice, nice.
And so all these things are happening, but this AI, this advanced algorithms, this kind of things that are not sexy and nobody wants to talk about it, but they can have this giant impact on how effective and efficiently we not only manage climate and resources, but labor and the product itself. Like that is a whole untapped region, I think. I think you have to be careful because again, you can't, in my opinion, you cannot data ahead of lettuce to perfection. You
Mm.
still have to have some sense of growing plant person, um, it's a little bit of intuition or a little bit of knowledge there, but it's super important to have that data. So that data, that AI, that technology, just that whole movement forward. How do we take that next step? Energy use, energy efficiency, CO2 use, CO2 efficiency. That's a big one to me right now because it's all over the board. Um, Water capture doesn't matter if your greenhouse is off the grid. Yeah, no, maybe. Does it matter to you? Is it sustainable? Does it, things like that? I think it's a really cool idea. But start talking about, what it is like to manage rainwater or how
Mm.
hard to get solar on the grid in places that don't really want that. And so that I'm getting off your technology piece, but like, I think that education and that combination of industries and working together is super important. I think most of the really cool innovations we have at Eden Green came from an industry that didn't even know we were an industry before that. And so I love that. Just start the conversation. Put it that way.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
And I think even within that, there, sort of the cross pollination, and bringing in different perspectives and experiences into an industry that, we'll call it new, right? That has a lot of
there's a
room
new part of
to
it. Yes.
to grow. And we heard that at Indoor AdCon. I mean, that seemed to be a common theme, was how many people came to our industry because they wanted to be part of building a new industry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Where and an industry that's feeding people that, at least uh feels good, right? That we're
Yeah.
making a difference potentially in
Gratifying.
people's
Yeah.
lives.
I love telling my girls what I do. They love that their dad grows lettuce in a greenhouse.
But,
So that's important. That's a good test to me. If you went to a class of
mm,
third graders, would they get it? My daughter's class gets it. Like that's kind of cool. Even if they don't think it's cool, they understand it resonates,
yeah.
right? And it's important. And every I think that everyone's job is important, but that's it's a different level when it comes to that kind of social aspect of things.
I love that. And you said something earlier about when you were playing with the lights and the sensors, and how, there's a lot of theories, and there's even automation and sensor, you can only have so many sensors, and the feedback control, and ultimately you kind of had to go through it yourself, right? To play with everything,
Yeah,
to understand, right? Lights down low, lights in the middle, lights up high, and how
yeah,
many sensors do you need, that it still took a human being to, right,
yeah,
to do the experimentation, to say, look, well, maybe this was the best in terms of like getting the best yield, but when it comes down to it, having a 10% variation is going to be okay. But you really need kind of your insights, right, in order to,
yeah,
and you're right, to
yeah. No, you're 100%
quantify the
right.
value of
Hey,
what you're going to get back from an
it's
AI or automated system.
I have 5 growers that work for me right now on my team, and I have one grower that is by the book, theoretical, mathematical application. I have 7 articles that say this, and I love that, right? And then I have another grower who is just like, huh, and they'll think outside of the box, no math, no nothing, and I want both of those things.
Yeah.
You need both of those things. It's that beautiful blend of art and science that it takes to be a successful grower, in my opinion. You need all the data to innovate, but data will not innovate for you. Not in my opinion. Not yet.
That's K Profundo. I
Yeah.
like that. So
Yes, quite a bit actually. So
He's got his philosopher's cap on, everybody. You
Well,
can't
I
see
think
it,
that
but
that's yeah,
yeah.
no. I like to sit back and just think about how it's no. No, but it's true. I think that's where we miss. You need all of that math, all that data. You have to do the work, but those new ideas are spawned from something you felt, saw, heard, smelt, whatever. You know, just I was talking to somebody the other day about learning music and learning music theory, and then making this blend of music theory is like math theory, and you can learn math with music theory. So can I apply any thought of music theory to plant theory? It's really interesting, it's
Ooh.
really crazy, and I mean, probably going down that tunnel more than warranted, but it's interesting to me because there's patterns, and I always say a greenhouse is like a symphony. Everybody has to be playing the same song and at the perfect time and in the perfect ratio for that to sound right. That's what growing plants is like, right? That's exactly what that is. You have 9, 10, 8, 12 parameters that have to all be in sync and adapt and adjust to each other. And that's just like conducting an orchestra. And I think there's some similarities there, even if it's just a philosophical analogy. I think there's some lessons to learn from thinking outside the box that way.
I love that because I mean, even, if math is the universal language, then that means that it should be able to apply to
Yes.
everything, all systems,
Yep.
all living systems. Yeah.
Yep. I think
Um,
there's some curiosities there. I'm sure there's people out there that swear by AI and that they can math a Mona Lisa. Like, that's fine. Go ahead. Like, I get it. And you might be right. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep thinking of crazy, weird stuff and asking people at the store why they buy their lettuce. So,
the other thing, I mean, coming from your breeder's perspective, if you're
mm,
looking for specific qualities and traits, AI might miss the opportunity that you have a plant that is behaving different than
sure.
everything else. And that actually might be a beneficial quality,
Oh,
not
yes.
right, not a point
Yes.
to put
Perspective.
rip out and
Yeah.
throw in the garbage.
And not only that, but then again, I'll say Eden Green. Nobody's done it the way we're doing it. So all of your rules go out the window. Or I need it to the nth degree. Or oh yeah, but don't forget I have towers everywhere. Right. So like we have to always consider everything we do with a grain of salt, every theory we apply, every book we buy or article we read or whatever, it wasn't done like we do it. It just
Yep.
wasn't. And so we're learning things, we're applying things, and then we're learning again, and then we're reapplying constantly, constantly, constantly learning. And it's exhausting and exhilarating at the same time.
It's the scientific method.
Oh God, yes, it is. With a little bit of music. We always have music
With
on.
music theory intertwined in there. I love that. I love that. So if we pull out your crystal ball, Aaron,
Ooh,
what's the
yeah.
future of greenhouses? Go as short or long term as you want. Where are we going to be in
um,
100 years?
yeah.
Whoa.
We're going to Mars. No, sorry.
Now we're putting the Nostradamus hat on.
Yes, yes, I love that. Well, I'll be growing lettuce that's same diseases or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. I think sometimes I am too nearsighted because I'm so
Mm.
focused. I don't have that perspective. And um
Well, let me twist it on
yeah,
you.
okay.
What
Okay.
do you want to be doing in 15 or 20 years?
I want to be checking out my team's greenhouses and their successes from some beach somewhere is what I want to be doing.
I will join you.
That's a leadership question. I told my team the other day, I'm like, one of my like OKRs for Q2 is like, I don't want to be here every day anymore. So,
Mm.
but if I'm doing my job well and being your leader, like that's it. But on another note, like I still think you're going to have this reckoning as a bad connotation. I still think you're going to have this collaboration, consolidation, conglomeration, whatever one you want to say, of the industry and the technology. I think field guys are going to start saying, I need a greenhouse here to sell my product and use that as an avenue of their product. I think there's going to start to be a lot of consolidation that way. I think you're going to have winners and losers like we're already seeing, and you're going to have people that may make better teams down the line. And it's going to start standardizing. That's not a sexy answer, but I think it's true. Like to me, that standardization is sexy because that means we're still here and we're successful and we figured something out. And that boring can be just as attractive sometimes. Like, this is how you grow lettuce the best way. We figured it out because we all got there, survived all this craziness, and made a better product. It's gonna be a bumpy road, I think. Maybe not for everybody, but you're starting to see a little more agreement, a little more cooperation, definitely better conversations. I think Indoor AgCon was a really good example of what a great energy I felt there. What a great vibe it was. It wasn't this Debbie Downer who's going out of business tomorrow and what the hell are we doing? It was definitely this vibe of like, yeah, this feels real good again. This feels like, you went through that trough of despair and you're coming back up and you're going to figure out where we really want to be. And I think everybody had that sense there, quite frankly.
Yeah.
So
You,
I
you
didn't
just,
answer your question, but that's what I
no,
mean.
no. I mean, I like what you said, and you kind of gave me an analogy for our industry, which is kind of dating versus married life. Is that we're
Yeah,
kind of, I feel like the industry, we're kind of in our 20s. We're still dating,
yeah,
right? We're
yeah,
trying out different
yeah,
strategies and technologies and methods, and
yeah. It's good.
um
Yeah,
and some of us are are in long-term relationships and then break up, and then eventually like we get married, and then things stabilize and mature, and then you do have standards, right? Like you have your standard place you go out to dinner, right?
yeah.
Like on a Saturday or something,
Little
like
boring,
like
but I like
yeah. And
that.
so
Right?
it's boring, but it's stable,
Comfortable
right?
and
And comfortable.
stable,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
feel
And then you can
successful.
build from there, and you only
Yes.
and that's where fine wine
Yeah.
happens, right? Is
Yes.
after all
That's
the
exactly right.
instability has
Yeah.
ended, and then you
Yes.
keep it on the shelf for another 15 or 20 or
Yes.
50 years, and then it's delicious,
No,
right?
that's I like that analogy. Like when you start realizing, like, I can afford really nice things now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and so that's a good analogy. I think I like that. That's a good timeline. It plays out parallel to the industry. Um, don't and I'll say this to a lot of people, that desire to be the quiet life and the boring standard. Don't stop. Don't get complacent though, right?
Mm, good
Like,
call.
like there's I still want to spend part of my week or day or whatever just dreaming, just being like, but what if, you know what I mean? And
Yep.
so it's not discontentment, it's innovation, it's just thinking, it's dreaming, and you should always do that.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed. All right. Last question for you,
So,
Aaron. You know it's coming. What
oh
do
no,
plants crave?
love.
Um.
No, I have a proverb that I like. I think it's a Chinese proverb that says the best fertilizer is the footsteps of the farmer. And I think there's still a big value in looking at your plants every day. Somebody earlier in my career said you should look at every plant every day, even though you can't. And
Mm.
I think just getting out there and understanding what's going on. And I don't think that someone said, "Oh, but I'm going to automate that with a drone and a robot, and I'm going to take image analysis." That's fine. You're still doing the job. Like physical footprint, that's a that's an idea. It's not meant to take literally,
You're
right?
right.
Like,
Yeah.
just get involved with your plants. Plant empowerment says listen to your plants, give them what they need, and they'll take care of you. And so I think they crave that attention, that relationship, that TLC, whatever you want to call it. I had another great boss and mentor of mine that on our list of job descriptions, your task was to talk to your plants, and they meant it in the very literal
I
sense.
love that. And you
um,
could bring your music in
oh
to the
yeah, no, that
greenhouse,
was
right?
building our new greenhouse right now. We're expanding Eden Green 2025. I'm so excited. Yeah, that's like giant PA system with Aaron's Spotify account connected. So
Yeah. With
hell
grunge
yeah.
90s grunge music.
Yes, 90s grunge on Monday, R&B, hip hop on Tuesday, a little Dave Matthews on Wednesday, the Stones on Thursday, and crazy makeups. Maybe I'll have a Swifty day for my daughters in there on
There you
Friday.
go. Yeah. For field trip days.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I love that. No, I do have a Music Monday Slack thing. I like to ask everybody, "What are you listening to today?" And everybody throw that up there. So I like that. That's
Nice.
cool. Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. So Aaron, I have sort of 5 fun questions for you. Okay. So they're supposed to be like rapid fire, just a quick answer, unless you want to elaborate on them,
No, no,
but
no, no,
it's
no. I'm gonna go
okay.
quick. I'm not backing down. Maybe
All
I will.
right. Let's do it. All right. Are plants introverts or extroverts?
Extroverts.
Okay. What's the worst advice you've ever been given about growing a plant?
Oh, I don't know. Pass. I gotta think. I gotta think. Ah, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot.
Okay. All right.
I gotta think about it. Come
We
back
can
to
come back to it.
me. Yeah.
Okay. What's the most important tool in your toolkit?
Oh, good. My my quick answer was my eyes, my ears, and my brain.
That's valuable.
And that's being present in the moment like that. It's probably my cell phone.
Okay. Look, he's honest, folks.
I'm dead serious. Like it keeps me connected.
Why? Just out of curiosity, like just being in
Um,
contact with everybody?
no, 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 no. Plugged into my
No.
plants. I have a lot of my plant systems on my phone, and so
Oh, there
the
you go. Okay.
accessibility that plugged into data, like I talked about earlier. So if I'm out in the greenhouse and man, this feels really humid. It's right up on the phone. This. Oh, look at that vent. Why is that one doing that? Whatever. That kind of thing. That connection to my
Okay.
greenhouse plants. Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. If you weren't growing lettuce and herbs, what would you be growing in a greenhouse?
Orchids.
Interesting.
Because I don't think I can.
I hear they're pretty hard to grow.
um, there's a part of me that still thinks cannabis is the sexiest plant I ever grew. But I think it was just because it was so many. You see so many things expressed,
Mm,
in the flavonoids and all that good stuff, and what you do, and it was so mysterious and but also so reactive and responded so much differently to stimuli. But yeah, I think I would give myself a shot at growing a good flower, quite frankly. I have no idea what I'm doing there, but
I love that. Well, when you need another challenge in 20
yeah,
years when
right.
you're sitting on the beach, you can
Yes. Well, that's good. They're kind of topical, right? So
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, so
maybe
you're
go ahead.
so you're from Southern Illinois, and I think you did a stint somewhere in St. Louis, and now you're in Texas. So I have to ask this question.
Yeah.
St. Louis ribs or Texas ribs?
Yeah, those ribs, 110%.
You
I
heard it
love
here, folks.
I love and appreciate Texas, but my roots go to St. Louis to the Midwest. So yeah.
Nice, nice. I'm going to be in St. Louis soon, so I'm going to try to get some ribs while I'm there.
Spring's a good time to be in St. Louis.
Yeah, okay, good, good. Well, Aaron, that's it.
Good. I
Thank
love
you
this. Thank you.
so much. This was so much fun. I think we found 2 or 3 other topics that we could rap about for an hour each.
Yeah. No. Good. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm invigorated. Thank you.
I'm always invigorated when I talk to you.
Likewise.
Yeah. Thank you for being my guinea pig of getting back on the
I hope
podcast
it was
horse.
effective. I know I can get awful wordy and I talk a lot. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Have a great rest of your day and
Thanks.
and
I gotta go,
yeah.
A couple more
Go
things
learn
to
some
do.
music theory, maybe.
I think I'm definitely gonna put some music on right now. That's for sure. That's happening.
Yeah, I think I've been inspired to put some Dave Matthews on. I haven't listened for a while.
It's like live and simple.